Country, and therefore it's got to, first of all, do its job in exhibitions and education and remain convincing to everybody. This is, I think, one of the hardest jobs right now in the middle of the 20th century.
What do you mean convincing?
Well, you know, 10 years ago, all the artists were saying all museums should be closed and we should have the space to exhibit, and then another movement comes along and somebody else says that museums should no longer deal in history, they should only deal in the finest fine art, and so forth. And we're going through a whole series of processes of change. And for years and years and years, everybody said education is the most important thing. And I just took part in a seminar at the College Art Association in which the question was brought up, is museum education worthwhile in the first place? Can you educate the public? So there's some very serious questions going around that one has to think about and play with.
Education. Okay, in 9th grade, what area of the museum did you want to see? Medieval. Okay, just a second, let me get the right form. Did you have a tentative date in mind? Was there a time that you wanted to come? End of May, early June. Okay, how about Wednesday the 30th? The 30th of May. Say about 12 o'clock? Right. Now, how many students are there in the group? Okay, we can do that at 12 on Wednesday the 30th. And this is a medieval tour. Is this connected with the social studies unit? Okay, social studies.
Portrait of George Washington?
Yeah, portrait, yeah. Portrait.
Yeah, what was the other one? Genre painting. We looked at a genre painting.
And I wanted the, it had the landscape.
And the mountains on the picture.
I'm gonna color this red and color this right here.
This gonna be different colors right here.
And then I'm gonna just leave that like that. It's gonna look nice.
We ain't got no brown.
Yes,
I know you can make brown by red and gray.
Like that. Something like that.
Think about putting it on. Part right here.
Yeah, wouldn't it lift up?
Well, it wouldn't exactly lift up. It might move some.
I think the skirt like even comes from here down here. Maybe that would come off and so like that first part. And then you take one leg at a time and pull it up.
Maybe they put on one leg at a time and then that part would come apart.
I noticed like in the Egyptian thing, you had it made like something like a tomb. And here you have it made something like a castle.
Yeah, we try to put the art in the places where it looks the best. And this was just the basement of our original building, but it looks kind of like a castle, so it's a very good place for the armor.
The sword sometimes goes through the armor.
Yeah, armor could be pierced sometimes. But by this time, they were so covered with armor that they almost had to wait for somebody to fall down. Okay, what I want you to do now is think about protection. We've been talking about how could somebody get a dagger through and everything. What I want you to do is get up and look at these 4 suits that are right up in the front. This one and this one and that one and that one. And decide which of those you think is the best protection. Yeah, yeah.
Is there a number on there? Yeah.
The registrar basically keeps track of all the pieces of art that is in the collection here. When we do get a shipment in from another museum or like a traveling show, the registrar has to be here when we unpack it so she can look at the condition, and the museum will send their condition report on it, and she has to check to make sure nothing was damaged during you know, the shipment of the piece. It's a lot faster to take down a show than it is installing one. So that takes a couple days, and after that we bring in all the cases that the curator, you know, asked for. And the well-planned curators, I guess, are the ones come down with the schedule, know exactly where everything's going to go, know exactly what case is going to be used, you know, how tall he wants it off the deck, you know, for viewing and everything. And I don't know, we all seem to work pretty well together.
Just mark both sides. I'll measure it out and mark both sides. Wait a minute. Okay.
I think the trouble is because it's tilted.
Good evening. I want to greet you and welcome you to the first in the series of 4 lectures related to our current exhibition, A Baltimorean in Paris, George A. Lucas, Art Agent, 1860 to 1909. I'm Lillian Randall, and I share the podium tonight with my collaborator on the show, William Johnston.
Very good, the one in the paper today. Well,
I read it yesterday.
We didn't expect this many people at the reception. I have to say
I
that.
bet not on a day like this, but I think this is a very popular time to come and
Yeah, it's good.
What about the role of the museum to the community, especially since it's a non-profit organization?
Well, this is very important.
To
but
Baltimore in particular.
The question is, what is that role? I mean, because we go back to the question of whether we're educational and whether education is the important function, or whether exhibits are the important function, or whether the basic original function of the museum, which is the preservation of art for the future, is the most important function.
Well, which of those 3 do you think takes?
Well, I think the preservation, because if you don't take care of the goods, you're not going to have anything to talk about or teach about or work with in the future. But I think that you can't really say one's more important. That merely comes first, because it has to come first. First you preserve the collections, then you can do something with them.
Conservation. Hi, Elizabeth. How are you doing? Oh, had you always had shades before? Mm-hmm. Right. Uh-huh. Well, what I ended up buying was something from a company called New York Central Supply, which makes stuff for printers and lithographers. And they have 100-yard rolls. And I bought the 48-inch wide glassine, green glassine that they had sent us a sample of, and it looks rather nice. Now, who knows? I mean, I may not be pleased with it.
The purpose of art conservation in a museum is generally to preserve the collection. Part of the conservator's expertise lies in an understanding of the structure and the behavior of art materials and in inhibiting deterioration, either from external sources or internal sources. Most people think that we just fix things or restore things in the conservation laboratory, but that's simply cosmetic work. We treat art objects to make them as aesthetically pleasing as possible, but only within the limits of the safety for the object.
They disappear after.
What we consider our most important function is to preserve the collection through creating proper environment for each object and in treating objects that have already begun to deteriorate. The background of the conservators in our department is very varied. We all have art history or archaeology backgrounds and studio art backgrounds and chemistry and other related science backgrounds. And certain skills, manual dexterity is really quite important. Color matching abilities, and of course a great deal of patience.
I didn't know if that was from the bead to the top of the rim, or if it was going to be displaced into the foot when the new foot is put on. So I really don't know what the relationship of the handle is to this until I get her measurements back. I could do it and then add on to it or pare it down. If I use Vine Gel, would I be able to... I was just thinking because the way that the handle that Von Bothmer sent me is 4 twisted pieces, so if I could do it in the ancient technique and then fire it, the Vine Gel.
What I would do is get it nice and soft and roll it into, the thickness that you want, and wait till it gets cold again and then twist it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got the first call about the Learning Museum program when I was working here on Saturday morning, and I didn't even know what it was about. Somebody had already read the Sunday paper. A girl who was obviously very excited about the idea of courses in the gallery in the evening and was ready to register already on Saturday.
Wonderful.
So I think there's going to be a lot of response. And the whole idea.
Have you asked today how much?
I haven't. No, I haven't asked Joseph. I left a note on his desk, but presumably that, if the concept works, it'll just be the original idea of the university museum, not in the sense of being the one in Philadelphia, but, I've always thought, this was the original idea. And, why there are libraries, good libraries on the Met and the Boston Museum, is because they were intended for the public to learn more about art.
Right.
And now the public can't even get in them. So this really should be one of the things of the Learning Museum, is to make the books available.
Well, I suppose there are 2 sides to it. A curator would be someone who would be involved in setting up exhibits, a person going off to auctions, to dealers. And I suppose the private part would be the person, the curator, who's the one who works on scholarly efforts. And I suppose that's the part that the public really doesn't see that much. But I would think that the scholarly part is the part that really is the major part of what a curator does behind the scenes. In terms of a background for a curator, first of all, probably the most important thing would be solid training in the field. I don't think it would necessarily be on the doctorate level, but more and more it's becoming so. Then the other very important thing is lots of museum work. Just being around a museum, that's how one gains experience. And that's how one really becomes a connoisseur, I think, is just being around objects all the time. The other thing is having a feel for one's collection and really knowing it very well. and knowing what you have in your museum and what somebody else has in his museum and how it relates to you and in your, with your collection.
They go out on the floor from 8 to 10. Well, of course, before 8, they're there. They have a cup of coffee, and they joke one another. Then, of course, after 10 or 11, other than their half-hour breaks, they do not talk to one another. We do not allow guards to hold conversations on the floor. It is an interesting job. You get to meet the public, and you get to help people out of towners who come, have never been to Walters, they've heard quite a bit about it. And it gives you a certain amount of pleasure to help these people so they can take it back to where they came from, that to other people that they were treated great.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Rosalind. Happy birthday to you.
Come over here, let me get the first gift.
A few more days.
Yeah, I would say a few more working days and it should be finished. Because I want to finish up cleaning the inside. I've got this section to re-clean since it's
The
tarnished
inside
again.
won't affect the photograph.
Right, okay.
But I mean, you may want to do it before you repair it.
Yeah, and I want to do the final. Oh, one thing I wanted to ask you was, where is this ring supposed to be on this? I mean, as it is now, the solder that's on there I don't think is original. And there's no indication. You think it's where it is supposed to be?
Where it's meant to be, yeah. I would think it was behind this wider spread here. I'm just trying to work out a photography schedule with her. And there are only two things that need to be cleaned that he has to photograph, and this is one.
The other one's the pectoral.
The other is the pectoral.
I'm just warning you that Anne likes these.
Yeah, I know that.
Harry, our photographer, takes weeks and sometimes months working on the photography for a major catalogue. He can sometimes spend a whole day photographing one object to get the effect he wants. When he's finished his photos, I take them and coordinate them with the text. Then I follow each stage of the printing and production process, making sure it's coming out right. Revised colour proof. And decide then. Okay, so I'll be seeing you next week, Mike.
We're getting a little pink, but it fell right in with just a little bit of red off, and it hasn't bothered the floor.
This looks fine to me, Victor, does it?
It looks different.
Exhibit them, then you can make exhibits, then you can play around with them. But all of these things really are, they're indivisible. You know, when you put a sculpture on a pedestal, it's instant education, isn't it? I mean, you don't even have to put a label there, but it's something people can look at and be inspired by and think is beautiful or react against or whatever. It's hard to know where to put the emphasis. I think everybody's struggling with this. And if you take what's going on at the Metropolitan Museum right now, they're saying that fundraising and the business end of a museum is first and primary. And no longer does the art director run the Metropolitan Museum. A businessman runs the Metropolitan Museum. So this is a totally new view of what a museum is. It's suddenly become a fundraising organization.
But isn't the fundraising to be used then to support the activities you're talking about?
Well, this is in theory correct, but you know, sometimes the tail can wag the dog.
Hello, Martin. John Nozinski. I'm at Baltimore at the Walters, yes. It is, it's exciting. With regard to the jewelry show that we talked about, and we have just had a commitment from Viking Press that they're going to publish the book. My question is, would the Brown-Forman Corporation like to be the corporation on the cover, the front page, as the benefactor that made it all possible over the past 3 years? We're looking at a total cost commitment of $55,000 for this volume.
I'm Edward McCracken. I'm the administrative officer of the gallery, and I want to welcome you here tonight for one of what we hope will be a series of corporate nights for the firms that contribute to the gallery's annual giving fund.
While we're waiting for the elevator, I'll tell you just briefly that we'll go for our 15-minute tour on the 3rd floor, then we'll go to the conservation department, then we'll have another little 15-minute tour, and then you can go to your watering holes. Right? It's rather broken up, but we have to do this because we have a large group to sandwich in here.
But I mean, it would seem to me that some places would need a whole building practically for the amount of conservation work that they probably could be doing or ought to be doing.
That's true. Well, the Walters does have a large collection, too.
Sure.
One of the conservators or the curators or the director flying the piece to the country and then back again. It saves the integrity of the object. It cuts down in many respects on shipping and receiving, and it's a good policy as far as curatorial staff and administrative staff just to stay in touch with their colleagues abroad.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We have for your further competition the second session, the sale of pre-Columbian art and colonial paintings. I call your attention to the conditions of sale printed in the front of the catalog. Article 8, which states everything is sold on an as-is basis and under the terms of the guarantee. Article 8 states you're responsible for state and local taxes unless you're exempt from those taxes by law. And as you're all well aware, a premium of 10% is added to the hammer price of each lot this afternoon's auction. 700. Lot number 207. And $12,000 is bid for this lot now at $12,000, $13,000, $14,000, $15,000, $16,000, $17,000 up, $18,000, $19,000, $20,000, $21,000, $22,000, $23,000. On the far right at $23,000. At $23,000 now at $23,000. At $23,000 now at $23,000. The bid's far right upstairs at $23,000. Yours, sir, $23,000. $279. And $500 is bid at $500, $600, $700, $800 here at $800. At $800, $900, $1,000. $1,100 on my left. At $1,100 now at $1,100. At $1,100 here at $1,100. At $1,100 now at $1,100. The bid's on my left and fair warning at $1,100. $1,100.
It's a very nice collection of Greek patrinium.
All her.
And in a nice place. Oh, yes.
Diana's working on it now.
Yes.
I'm trying to get clean at the moment.
I wonder where Mr. Walters bought all those pieces. I don't think they come from us.
Some did, but not all.
Actually, I wanted to ask you about some of the jewelry he bought from you.
Jewelry, yes, the jewelry came from us mostly. But I don't, personally, of course, I've been in business for the last 60 years, but Mr. Walters used to... It looks a little like those Babylonian pieces with I think it's later, because the Babylonians are...
Marion Gallery.
The folds were so unusual, and
Yes, I've never seen this kind of flaring out.
and also this kind of, and he said that it looks like the kind of thing that could come, you know, provincial, maybe Parthian.
It looks so well done though for provincial.
Yeah,
it's not as crude as you'd expect.
Oh no, I think she's really glorious. And then I know in the Toledo Museum there's a silver figure with that same knot, which is a
She looks
provincial
like
piece.
Matidia or one of those Hadrianic types.
You're the second one that said that. It's probably so.
Grim lady.
Grim, yeah.
You've also got it at exactly the right angle for all the shadows to be played up.
Yeah, well,
when you tip her, she loses it.
Oh, that really is important in mounting a head. I find I spend more time with that than I do with.
Yeah, I bet.
And how I have the feeling that this was used almost to hold, you know, while they were riding the chariot.
Husband, Eliza Credilla. What a name. And we have already from the family, 6 years ago, acquired a portrait of Eliza's mother, Mrs. Hare. So we now are basically in possession of the Miller family portrait.
So may I have a motion approving this?
We return in the purchase area to jewelry. We have one of the world's greatest expert on rings, Diana Scarisbrick, working for us for 3 weeks, cataloging the Renaissance parts of the collection, and I waited until she came so that she could look at this and consider it, and she thinks it's fabulous. It's a German ring with the initials SK and a crest, and with beautiful engraving. You want to pass that around if anybody wants to play jeweler.
I think you should start with the ladies first.
In any case, it's beautifully engraved on the shoulders with a figure of a courtier and a lady, and it's for sale for $3,000. It comes, incidentally, from a Baltimore collection, that of Melvin Gutman, which was sold some years ago in New York.
Which of the curatorial sections of our concessions fund does this get charged again?
It'll get charged to mine, which is medieval. And we'll argue about the year. But fortunately, we're not like the
And then we've
Metropolitan
got this
Museum,
kind,
where
which the French call the bague à l'enfantage. Now, l'enfantage or l'enfantement means conception, so I just don't see how that term can be translated into our language. And I'm still racking my brains for it, but once we get it, we'll have no problem about the correct terminology for this type of ring. But you see how that differs from this kind? You see, this is literally a speck, but it's been magnified by that kind of setting. And it looks as if the setting is
back. You see these men? They're going to sparkle up. I'm not sure though. They have some of that funny cast to them the way the other ones did. These are really these things. Oh yeah, they are, aren't they? Leave it to those Romans.
Wasn't the manuscripts in Padua recently been published? I think I saw an announcement.
Yeah, Padua, Alexander has something to do with that. Edition of.
I forgot how it was called. My remembered it, and it's been traced back to some kind of fourth star. It has to be fourth star.
Final boarding call for Icelandic Flight 402, service to Reykjavik and Luxembourg, boarding at Pier E.